And everyone said, Amen. Okay, so just for you guys that are joining us today, we are in a class or a course called or it's known as Apologetics. And it doesn't mean to apologize. It's not what it means. Apologetics it's a Greek word. It means to make a defense or to defend your faith. Basically, you're standing for what you believe in. And so that usually involves while theology is studying about the Bible and God and everything, apologetics takes the Bible, it takes philosophy, it takes science, it takes history, it takes archaeology, it takes all of that stuff and just bundles it all up together. So I cannot tell you all that in 8 weeks, but I can kind of give you a sample of, and hopefully encourage you in some of your study and reading, depending upon which way you want to go. I'm recording all of these sessions. They will all be edited and available with notes and everything once we're done with this. So if you're afraid of missing something, don't worry about missing it. But I'm glad you guys are here. So tonight, last week we talked about like knowledge, right? How do you know what you know? Like how do we know anything, right? Well, tonight we're going to talk. It's called The Heavens Declare. And that is the cosmological argument and intelligent design. Fancy way of saying, is there evidence for God? Is there evidence that God made the world, made us? You know what I mean? That's what we're talking about. And so I want to look really at the first picture here. Now, this is a phone. How many of you guys think we could have gotten this just but randomly by chance? Nobody involved, nobody touching anything. A phone just kind of appeared in your hand. How many of you guys think that's possible? Yeah, okay, no. So we know that's not possible, right? As it's not possible that a hurricane will go through a junkyard and assemble a 747 that would fly out. That would not happen, right? Order does not come from chaos. But unfortunately, the teaching of evolution and stuff that we grew up in the schools, they want us to believe that this world just kind of formed, the universe just kind of formed, and we just were blobs and we became a single cell, and from there we became human beings and all kinds of animals, and we branched out. You've seen these pictures, right, in the school, and it was all random. They call it evolution. And of course, we don't believe that. We believe we were created by God. Amen? And so I want to explore with you, I'm just going to share 3 ideas with you this evening that you can be encouraged, and I'll also suggest some websites to you that you can go to. There's some great videos out there. I can text that stuff to you afterwards if you really want to kind of get into that. And again, some people are like, that's science. I don't want to get into it. But just hear me out. There's 3 ideas. And the first one really is, and again, you don't have to remember this, but this is a cosmological argument. Basically, classic apologetics is this. Whatever begins to exist has to have a cause, right? Something's got to cause it to exist. It doesn't just exist by itself. Make sense? Premise 2, the universe began to exist, right? It did begin. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Pretty simple, right? Now, that's great because we've got a causer. God is the cause. And we have 3 scriptures here. The first, of course, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. John 1:1-3 says, in the beginning the Word, that's Jesus, already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. He existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. So nothing was created except through Jesus. So Jesus was there at the beginning creating the whole thing. The universe had you and I in mind, the whole thing. And then, of course, Psalms 19. And the whole psalm is really beautiful. But it says, the heavens proclaim the glory of God. Skies display his craftsmanship. Have you guys ever gone out? When we were on Kauai, there was a place where there wasn't a lot of lights where we were staying, and we just go out at night. And it's so beautiful. And it's funny because I drag Ashley out there. Come here. I drag my granddaughters out there. Come here. What? Oh, okay. And they look. No. You have to look and you have to let the light. You have to let your eyes adjust. right? Because you just came out of the light. You have to wait. You wait a little bit. And then all of a sudden you start seeing more stars and more stars. And maybe if it's clear enough, a little bit of color. And then you see this big strip. This looks like a cloud, and that's the Milky Way. And we're inside of that. It's called the Milky Way galaxy. We're right in the middle of it. And it's so cool to look out at that and go, wow, God just did that. You ever look at the sunset and think, man, that looks like God just painted it, right? Exactly. It's beautiful, it's intricate, and he designed it. But we have books that are written by atheists and scientists that they say, oh no, it just looks like it's designed. That's what they actually say. Richard Dawkins in The God Delusion would say, oh, you just have to ignore that. It appears that it's designed. That's just an illusion. Really? How do you explain it then? Where did we come from? Well, maybe we were seeded in this planet by aliens. Great. Well, where did they come from? Oh, well, you can't just push it off onto somebody else. I can't solve the problem. Let me just push it off onto aliens. They want to say aliens because they don't want to say God, because with God there's moral implications. Aliens don't care how we live, but God does, because it's personal, because he made us in his image. He didn't just seed the planet. We aren't the experiment, right? So he is the causer. He is the one that caused us to exist. Now, how many of you guys have heard of the Big Bang? Big boom, big bang, whatever it is. Where does that come from? Well, back, I think it was 1929, this guy Hubble came up with this theory, and the idea really was that the universe, until then, believe it or not, scientists believed that the universe just always existed, which really didn't make sense. But he came up with some things, and I will go over all these tonight because, again, I don't want to lose you. But the Big Bang teaches that there was a beginning of the universe. The only thing is, he says, well, the beginning is 13.8 billion years ago. You know, how can you measure something that long ago and that far, right? It's kind of hard, right? It's hard for me to wrap my mind around thousands of years, and you're telling millions or billions of years? But they say there was this little tiny dot, and it exploded, right? And it was called a singularity, and it expanded outward, and over 13.8 billion years, and boom, the universe is the way it is. Now, there are so many problems with that. There's a lot of problems with that. But again, I don't want to go into too much detail on that tonight. But there's a problem because the Bible and everything we dug up historically, we can only gather together about 6,000 years of human history. And that's kind of what the Bible in its genealogies only gives us 6,000 or so years. Now, we don't have a date on the beginning of the earth. The Bible doesn't tell us really how old the world is or how old the universe is. But isn't there a big difference between a few thousand years and a few billion years? I think there's a lot. So what's interesting, though, is they built a new telescope. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the James Webb telescope. It's a telescope that they put way out into space. And they thought, you know, we're going to look through this telescope, and we're going to look back, and we're going to see nothing because we're going to look so far. We're going to be able to see so far. We'll see into the center of where the universe began 13.8 billion years ago. And they used however they measure it to do that. And they looked, and they looked, and what they found was not what they expected. In fact, it was more close to what creation scientists told them they would find. And so now they are reworking all their theories. And they are trying to figure out how to hang on to the Big Bang Theory. Because they know the universe had a beginning, but nobody wants to admit the Bible's right. So this is Dr. Lyle. I'll just let him speak.
I don't believe in the Big Bang. I'm going to make some predictions too. And this was before James Webb took any images. There will be lots of galaxies at great distances, even beyond redshift 14. They will be fully formed, massive and well-structured galaxies. And finally, I predicted that the farthest galaxies will have heavy elements like carbon and oxygen. Basically, I'm predicting the exact opposite of what the secularists were predicting. July of that year, the James Webb Space Telescope took its first images of the farthest in space that human beings have ever seen. What did it find? It found this. Galaxies upon galaxies upon galaxies, which is way beyond what the secularists were expecting. How about that? There are people who claim creationists, they don't make any successful predictions in science. There's three.
So what he was saying there was basically, they thought, okay, it had a beginning. They're going to go so far back. They're going to measure the starlight and everything. They're going to go so far back, and they were expecting to find nothing, but what they found was fully formed galaxies. And the Bible says that in the beginning, on day 4, God created. He just created it, right? And so there's all this thing about starlight and how fast light travels and all that kind of thing. And even that's being questioned by some different theorists. But basically, again, it gets back to the Bible is pretty accurate. And we're coming up with, and as science evolves, science gains more and more knowledge, we're discovering more and more. It's not evolutionary. It's not by mistake. There are some things that definitely look designed. So that's the idea that's called that, hey, God had to have made this, right? This couldn't have happened by accident. So that's one idea. The second idea is this. I don't know, have you guys ever heard of the fine-tuning of the universe? The fine-tuning? What is the fine-tuning theory? Basically, it's that when I look at anything, when you look at the human eye, right? We have a camera in this phone, but we have a perfect camera in our eye. You look at your hand and how it's structured. You look at how we're made, right? Everything looks like somebody thought it through. Somebody put it together, right? Just like how we invent things. Somebody had to invent us. Somebody had to put everything together. But you know what's really interesting is the second thing about fine-tuning is that, did you know this universe and even this world that we live in, the earth, everything is so perfectly tuned for our life, for us to live on this planet. You have no idea, and there's no other planet like us anywhere in the universe that they have ever found. We are on what's called the Goldilocks planet. That's not too hot, not too cold, but just right. Right? So, and I put this some in your notes. Let me share this with you. 'Cause in the 1950s, a physicist, right, that's a kind of scientist, they found these laws of physics that govern the known universe. And these laws scientific laws are things that don't change. They're constant. They stay the same. And so I've just put this up in the slide. I put these in your notes. Check this out. Did you know we're the perfect distance from the sun? We were just a little bit closer, we'd burn up. If we were just a little bit further away, we'd be popsicles, right? The narrow zone that we have, it's essential for stable oceans. And we need oceans to be stable because they regulate the temperature of the planet. Right? It's important. That's actual real climate change there, not the fake stuff. Right? Oceans are important. That we have what? A stable atmosphere. We have 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Perfect mixture. So you and I can breathe pretty well, right? Also, with greenhouse gases, right? That we always, so we have that right amount. If the atmosphere was too thin, the planet couldn't trap enough heat. So we couldn't stay warm. We'd be like Mars. Mars is freezing cold. I don't know why Elon wants to go there. I don't want to live on Mars. If our atmosphere was too thick, the planet would trap too much heat. We'd be like Venus. We'd be on fire. We'd be burning. Oh, it's so hot, right? I mean, sometimes it's been a hot past few days, yeah, but can you imagine just it being unbearable? We don't have to put on special clothes and go hide in caves or anything. It's perfect, right? The moon's size and distance. Earth's moon, it stabilizes the Earth's axis tilt, right? It prevents us from wobbling. Do you know we wobble around? We both wobble. The Earth would wobble too. We have the moon down. And it also controls the tides. You've heard of that, right? The moon, if you're a surfer, those tides and stuff. The moon has to do with that, right? If the moon were much smaller, again, we'd wobble around. We'd have massive climate swings, right? What about the Earth's magnetic field? You know, the Earth has a liquid iron core. Did you know that? It's a liquid core right in the very middle of the Earth. And so we have this, it makes this, what do you call it? It's kind of like a shield. And it shields us from radiation. You know, radiation comes from the cosmos, right? And man, we get radiated, right? We get cancer, whatever, we die. But we have that protection, right? How about water? 70% of the earth is covered in water. That sustains all like fish, all the kinds of life, right? Imagine if it was like Waterworld. You guys remember Waterworld? It'd be horrible. Oh my gosh. But we have enough land, we have enough water that supports all the biodiversity, right? All the animals supports us. So when you look at all these things, I don't know if this is it, but yeah, but the scientist Paul Davies, he basically said that, you know, everything is so precise. It's kind of like this, like the chances of us being so perfectly precise would be like hitting a bullseye on a dartboard the size of the universe. I mean, there's just no way. So we're here on purpose. We're made specifically. This planet was made for us to live on. Didn't just come out of some explosion. Isn't that amazing? And so these guys, these scientists, they study all this stuff, and there's creation scientists, and I can give you the websites and stuff if you really want to get into it. But I just wanted to give you a little bit taste of some of that. I'm going to kind of pause right now and just answer any questions. Yeah, like I said before, I realized that in apologetics, you know, the science area, you know, is it's really cool, and there's a lot of things in there, but I know that sometimes it's just you look at it and then you kind of glaze over because I mean there is so much information. But I just wanted to hit on this and give you like really the three main ideas that are really the major ones. And you know, like the first one we talked about, of course, that you know, I mean, this place, it looks like it's designed. The universe, the earth, us, we look like we were created. We're made. We don't look like an accident. Well, I don't know if you look like an accident or, no, just kidding. But we don't look, you know what I mean? We look planned, and so it looks designed. And this is the thing that, but there's a reason for that. There's a designer, right? And then the second idea is, hey, you know what? Our universe, even our Earth, everything is perfectly fine-tuned for you and me. You know, like if you have a pet and you kind of retool your house for that pet, oh, I'm gonna make them a little nice house, and I'll make them this, and I'll make this, and I'll make this so they can crawl over it, and I'll make this is, you know, put their food dish over here and their water dish over here. Yeah, I know you guys, you know, yeah, right. And don't you think God's doing that for us, right? Oh, I make the ocean. I'm gonna make this place called Hawaii. And it's really gonna be great, right? He made this place for us to enjoy, right? So that makes sense. And so it's totally fine-tuned perfectly for you and I and all the animals and everything just to live here, right? And so that's the second idea. And then the third one is this idea of DNA. How many of you guys know what DNA is? Or let's just right, there you go. How many of you guys have heard of DNA? Right. Okay. Yes. So basically, before I get into kind of DNA, I'm not going to get breaking it down and explaining all of it. Well, when you guys got the vaccine, that was the mRNA, and so you know that they researched, right, DNA to the human genome to get to that to make the vaccine. So it has a lot of applications, but we didn't know about DNA in Darwin's day. Darwin wrote Origin of Species, I want to say it's 1863, but I might be off on that, somewhere around the Civil War. But it was around that time that people began talking about his theory. And he went to the Galapagos Islands, and he looked at a small animal. He looked at the birds. Bird looks like this bird looks like this. Maybe this bird came from this bird, or this animal was first and this animal came after. Hey, maybe they evolved. When in reality, the normal person would just look at it and go, huh, you have two paintings that look really similar. I think it's because it's the same painter. Or I read two books and they both sound very similar because maybe the same person wrote the two books. When I look at animals and they look similar, wow, maybe the same God created both the same animals. But no, he had to do it the hard way and say, well, maybe let's just cut God out of the picture, assume there's no creator, and then everything just started with like a cell, and it just branched off into this animal and that animal. And so you have all this basically imaginary stuff that has been taught to our children, been taught to us over the years, for which there really isn't any proof. And in fact, there's a book called Replacing Darwinism where they took all the DNA. When they discovered DNA, Francis Crick started this. I think it was trying to think about the year, but basically it was in the early 20th century. They discovered DNA, and we've mapped the entire human genome. There are billions of pieces of information inside each and every one of us. We're like not just books. Each one of us is like a library of books. It's interesting because God spoke, right, us into existence. He spoke the world into existence. The entire world is held together by the Word of God. You and I are words, basically. And think about what is DNA. DNA, you have basically, it's a four-letter alphabet, A, T, C, G, right? And you guys have seen the helix, right? And I'm not going to explain how all that works because I would have a hard time doing that and you would have a hard time listening to it. But it duplicates. It's like a copy machine, right? Isn't that crazy? We've got all these machines running on inside of us. It's a copy machine and, all this kind of wild stuff. And so when they discover this, they put it through all the same testing that they did with Darwin's theory and found, and a lot of tests came out that, well, you know what? Monkeys have pretty much always been monkeys. He said humans have pretty much always been human. And they discovered that horses pretty much had always been horses. One animal didn't totally change into a different animal. That is not how it works. There was no branch off, into branching off into different species. One species did not turn into another. That's not how it worked. We had little microevolutions or little minor changes. But monkeys have always been monkeys. Apes have always been apes, right? Neither you or I are descended from monkeys. I know we might act like monkeys sometimes, but we are not descended from them. And hopefully nobody throws their poop at anybody, because if you do that, you might be one. But anyways, so this new discovery, right, is a great thing for creationists because they look at it and it shows that, well, we've got these little machines going around. We've got little copy machines inside us copying information. That's kind of what they had the vaccine, and however you feel about it, when you got that injection, that's called mRNA. What happened was it went in there, it did this little duplication thing, did its job, and then the original just disappeared. It's crazy. And again, they're doing all this scientific research and trying to find out ways to get rid of diseases and stuff. They're constantly finding things out, but God allows us to have knowledge. If he didn't allow us to know the stuff, we wouldn't know. Discovering things is part of the beauty of creation. Isn't that great? So just the fact that we have all this intricacy. So Bill Gates says this, and you guys know who that is, the Microsoft guy. He says what? It's like DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created, right? Now here's the key. When somebody asks you, oh yeah, but it all just kind of happened, all came together. No, it couldn't have. And this is the main reason that it couldn't have. Natural processes, okay? Natural processes can rearrange existing information but cannot generate specified complex information. Let me explain that in another way. When you heard of mutations, right? Okay? It's not like the Avengers. Oh, you mean like the X-Men? No. It doesn't work that way. You don't get superpowers with a mutation. You don't get X-ray vision or lasers coming out of your eyes or something like that, or super strength. That's not how mutations work in DNA. Mutations, you always lose them, right? Like dogs. We start out with the wolves, and we ended up with the Chihuahua. See, we lose information. Don't go from Chihuahua to wolf, go the other way around. You understand? So we're losing information through mutation. And this is why evolution doesn't work, because evolution needs us to add information. And like, the heart just doesn't, well, it gradually over millions of years becomes a heart. No. A man over millions of years doesn't become a woman. And it definitely can't instantly happen. Even if you pretend you're the other one and cut things off and stuff like that, it doesn't change anything about who you are inside, because 65,000 genetic differences exist between males and female human beings. That's a lot of difference, right? Our brains are wired differently. Our skin is different. Women have an extra layer of fat on their skin, makes your skin smoother than us guys, you know. I'm going to ignore some of that stuff. No. All right here. Let's not turn this from apologetics into a marriage seminar. So the information doesn't get added, right? So this whole thing of becoming another species is totally impossible. Just like you can't have a superhero or an Avengers, character come out of that. You can't have one animal become a different animal, doesn't work that way, right? The only things that change us, maybe the color of our skin, the shape of our nose and stuff, but we're still all the same inside, right? Little minor variations. So, and actually, this guy, we're in some interesting threads, but he's a scientist, and he kind of says the same thing.
May sound creative when used in pop culture references where superheroes gain fantastic abilities, but in actuality, they are genetic copying mistakes caused by various factors that occur when DNA produces copies of itself. And neo-Darwinism basically says that mutations provide variety, while natural selection sorts out the best of this new genetic information in order to evolve creatures, but far from producing useful and novel genetic information. Mutations tend to break things. They degrade the existing genetic code already in place. And while you can achieve different looks, such as normally red flowers being made pink when mutations delete some of the red pigment, for example, this is not actually the creation of a novel genetic feature from nothing. It's brought about by subtraction, not addition.
There you go. You guys understand? So that's really important, because that right there just shows, okay, well, that doesn't work. And this is why, as Christians, we can't be intimidated by this stuff or afraid to say anything in school or to challenge people on some of this stuff. Because a lot of people never hear this. They don't know. They don't know. And so, but when you know, and you're already solid in your faith, but when you know this kind of stuff, it's pretty powerful. And sometimes this is not the way you lead somebody to God, but you might break down a barrier that helps them to come to Jesus. That make sense? Maybe they just have a couple questions, and you just say one of these things. Hey, did you know about DNA? Did you know it can't make more information? You can only lose information. That's pretty cool, right? And maybe that's the only thing you remember from tonight. But you say that, that'll blow their mind. You go, I didn't know that. And they might know a lot of science, but they might not have known that. And they're like, what else do you know? I don't know. Come to Tuesday night. Ask my pastor, right? Or go to this website. You know what I'm saying? But it starts a conversation. That makes sense? So don't feel intimidated. Don't feel like you got to be this wellspring of knowledge. But just you learn a couple things, grab onto those things, and go, hey, that'd be pretty fun during Thanksgiving to bring that up, Did you know this turkey did not come from a different animal? No. But you know what I mean? So have some fun with it. So really, in connecting the dots, we have the three arguments. Cosmological, there's a reason that we're here. Somebody had to make us. Fine-tuning, it shows that there's intention and design in the cosmos. We're perfectly fine-tuned in the universe and in this earth to have life. And then the DNA information points to an intelligent creator. Romans 1:20 says, for since the creation of the world, God's visible qualities, eternal power, and divine nature have clearly been seen from what has been made, so that man is without excuse. People have no excuse for knowing God. When somebody asks, well, how do I know there's a God? Look up. You see the sun? Oh, yeah. Okay. You see the sunset? Oh, that's pretty. You see the water? Uh-huh. You see the trees? Uh-huh. Where do you think that came from? God. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Yes. Came from somewhere. But see, we pushed the truth away and made up all kinds of silly things, right? All kinds of silly origin stories and stuff to replace the simple fact that we were put here. God made this planet. He put us here on this planet. We said, we want to do things our own way. He says, no, get out of my garden. And, but then he sent Jesus, right, to make things right so we can get connected back to him. Amen? So now, someone might bring up, well, who created God, right? Well, that's again like the aliens thing. Aliens see the plan. Or who created God? How far back do you want to go? Well, maybe somebody else created God. And then who created him? It's a silly argument, right? God didn't have a beginning. God is eternal, right? That's the Bible says. He says, I am that I am. Or he always was. He has always existed. And that's a mind bender for us, right? But it's one of the mysteries. Maybe it's all chance or multiverse. Oh, here we go. Now, I know some of you guys think this is just comic book in the movies, right? It's the multiverse. You mean like Spider-Man? And he met other spider people? Yes, that theory. Did you know that that's not just in the comic books and in the Marvel genre and the movies? Did you know that scientists actually believe that? It's a theory. It's called M theory. It's a theory of multiple universes. You know why they had to come up with that? Because of the fine-tuning argument. They're like, oh, wait a minute. This looks like it was created. Well, if there were multiple universes and all these multiple worlds, then just by chance, our world was just perfect. Really? Okay, show me in the telescope. Where's the other universes? Well, I can't prove it. Making up more stories. See? What were you doing? Going to a comic book? Come on. You're making up stories. There's no way. That's just all in their heads, right? The thing that they accuse us of doing. Oh, people wrote the Bible. No. It's a historical document. That's another part of apologetics. When you get into historical evidence, like the evidence for Jesus, the evidence for the resurrection. People actually believe that Jesus didn't exist. That's like saying George Washington didn't exist. That's ridiculous. And there's far more proof that Jesus existed than George Washington existed. I could probably explain George Washington away. You can't explain Jesus away. So there's the multiverse. And then, of course, that information could arise over time. Again, there's no way to add information. Where did it come from? Did somebody just land their spaceship somewhere and do an operation on an animal and leave? No, there's no way to add information, through random processes. It's impossible. The only thing you could do is lose information, right? When two people get together, right? You have children. Information is actually lost from generation to generation, right? It's not, something doesn't just get added. When we get together, we have kids. Yes, they look differently because they have something from mom and dad, and that's from long line, right? I remember when my brother, I saw my niece, and my niece had my eyes. I was like, ooh, I had to take a step back a minute. But genetics, right? But the thing is, it's like some information is going to come out, some is going to be not as dominant. But over time, you lose information. I think we used to be much stronger against a lot of the diseases, but we don't have those immunities anymore. That's why we get a lot of those shots and things, because we don't have the same immunities that our ancestors did. It's degraded over time, right? Look in the Bible. You have people live 900 years. I cannot imagine having to live 900 years on this earth. Here, 900 years, okay, but here, come on. I want to change the location. I'll put in for a job change. You know what I mean? 900 years. But again, degradation of the atmosphere, of just what we have within us. We were probably up stronger stuff thousands of years ago. while, but we lose information. That's kind of how that happens. But when you put all these things together, there is so much more out there that I could share with you. But I would just encourage you to study. You can go to any of the YouTube channels, watch any of the Answers in Genesis videos. They're young Earth creationists. They have a lot of good stuff. Not all Christians, not Christian Science, but Christian scientists, not all of them necessarily believe in a young Earth. Some of them still believe in an older Earth. They have different theories, but they're all Bible believers. There's many Bible believers that are scientists that have a lot of good information, and they spend a lot of time out there talking about this kind of stuff. But I'll send you guys some links to that. But right now, I just kind of want to stop and ask if there's questions, and this can also flow into questions that have nothing to do with this as well. So, but